grab this so I can give you the presentation in chat. Okay, let's go back to here. And so I'm going to go ahead and put in chat the presentation. Find my chat windows over here. And today's presentation. And you should be able to download this. You can follow along or just keep it for later. And it should go there. All right. Okay. So again, we did a little bit of house cleaning. Make sure you subscribe. If you do watch the recording, please put likes or dislikes or comments about the recording so we can get this. And if you want certain things to be on this broadcast, we'd be happy to do demonstrations for you for certain topics. And that's where we're getting most of these now. They're coming in from you, the community, which is what we want. We want to be able to answer your questions along the way. So you can always email zen@microfocus.com, and we'll get the email, and I'll be happy to put that on the list. And maybe if we need a developer, I'm trying to get a developer for the Zocker, okay, because that's a new architect with ZCM. So I want to get a developer in here and talk a little bit about Zocker for you, so you get a better understanding of that. Next week is going to be appliance console navigation. Some people are concerned about going from an OS installed to a appliance. How do you get around? I don't know Linux. I mean, I was under the same boat working as a customer for many years, and was really resistant to go the appliance route, typically because it was Linux. And I've overcome that now, and they've actually streamlined this to be very accommodating for those like me that like GUI. But today we're going to do ZCC zone administrators and permissions. You can always check the upcoming schedule to see what's coming up on our website. The community website has all the upcoming events for this ZENcast, as well as all the past events. You can go directly to those ZENcasts directly from this page by clicking on the links in the columns. And it's sorted by product, so you can easily navigate to what you need to do. Just do a find on that page. All right. A couple of things in the community is the ZSD lookbook. If you have Service Desk and you want to know more about making sure you can get to the latest level, we now have what they call a lookbook or version currency page on the community. And so if you go to this particular page, you'll be able to go to directly to this page, which is what's your version. The nice thing about this page is we're going to be continually updating this, but it has videos, it has flyers, it has a version comparison chart, so you could see which version had what features, how to find your Service Desk version. It's just an instruction manual, just a quick cheat sheet on that, right? So if we select that, you can see here how to find your version at a glance, and it tells you some details on where to look. Now, the better news is we're even going to have this for Zen. They're working on this for ZenWorks configuration management. Okay, so you'll have the similar look and feel lookbook, they call it, about the product for ZSD and ZenWorks, and they're actually compiling it for all the products as we go along. So this is a really nice, handy, one quick stop you can get from the community or from this page. You can actually see what's going on about your particular product, and in this case, it's ZenWorks Service Desk. It takes you to the ZenWorks Service Desk homepage, talks about the community, gives some articles, as well as, like I mentioned, if you have a video or if you want to see a video on how to upgrade, there's a 6-minute, or why to upgrade, there's a 6-minute video on that. And then actually how to upgrade also in here. Let us help you with your upgrade. And that's a tutorial. All right. So that's one of the exciting news that's new out on the community, and I just wanted to point that out. Here's a few other links you'll find in the downloaded presentation, and it's just different things that are going on in the community and what just the newest stuff, okay, that we've seen in the community that's been posted. As far as TIDs, I'm starting to rotate new TIDs that come out. So, for instance, these few on the top, ZPM Office 365 patches and patch management. If you're using that, at least you'll know that those TIDs actually are present to help you out if you're using those particular things. There's also an imaging one here. You got Kafka not starting. So I'm just starting to list these so that you have a quick link to them should you need them. And if you download this presentation, of course, you'll have that particular link. The other thing is the 8.3.1 public beta is almost over, and we do have a ZCM update 3. 2020 update 3 is in beta as well. So 2 betas going on. The ZSD one will be ending this week, and ZCM, I'm not sure when that's ending, but it's currently going right now. If you're interested, again, zen@microfocus.com if you want to be involved with any of those betas. There are other live casts, like for Filer, GroupWise, Enterprise Messaging, OES, and iPrint. And Robin Redgraves does that out of the UK. And there's also a Coppinger-Cole analyst on Unified Endpoint Management, how we were written up in the analyst report for UEM. So we appreciate everybody that contributed to that as well. Events, Technology Transfer Partners. We just finished up. No, I think it's still going this week, but we have a technical insights that's happening, and the recordings are out there. You can click on these particular links in here to be able to see what's going on. But basically, it's a virtual conference, and it has all the different products throughout Micro Focus. On top of this, TTP actually has the community come in and talk about how they're resolving issues. So it's not necessarily just a Micro Focus product. They may be doing things in routing or that's different than a Micro Focus that doesn't pertain to a Micro Focus product. They may have certain processes in place. So go out there and you can see the full agenda, and you'll be able to see the recordings on those. Current versions, ZCM version 2020 update 2 is currently out. We do have a 1006 cumulative update. We did have a ZENcast a couple weeks ago about doing cumulative updates so that you can keep your ZCM zone up to date. And you don't have to hit every single one. You can skip, and you can schedule maintenance and those types of things. ZRS 7.8 is out there. ZSD 8.3 and MFDC 22.4 are the current versions in the ZenWorks portfolio. Upcoming, we have Update 3 is coming. It's currently in beta. We have ZSD 8.3.1, which will be released end of August, early September. And then MFDC 22.7 should be released next month. A little bit of recap. The migration, we did a migration to an appliance last week. So I failed to put in one parameter, so I got a botched demo. So I had to give you a recording, which was a snippet of it. But so I apologize for that. But I updated the download, and it has all the proper commands, and it's quite simple to go from a Windows or Linux installed ZCM primary to an appliance. So if you're interested in that, last week's had a demo and everything, and we had guest principal developer Harnath Charugula with us talking about that. Okay? But for this week, we're talking about zone permissions. And I added in some scheduling in there, and even might get into some things deeper like scripting. But for the most part, it's going to be zone permissions, bundles and policies, devices and users, remote management. What is it that you're trying to do? What is it that your technician or ZCC administrator has rights to do and you don't want them to touch. And so we have some ways of going about that. So we'll get into that in just a minute as we actually we're going to get into it right now. Let me open up my zone. Okay, so we have a 2020 update zone. I'm going to log in as administrator on this one. Okay, so here we have a zone. You can see there's a few bundles, there's a few policies, there's a few workstations. You can bring users in through your user sources, right? Which I've done here. And we could see my user sources. There's different containers within the user source. And so the reason why I want to specify user containers instead of the top of the tree, because when it goes through and does your sync or searching for individuals, it will search from the top down of any of these containers. So if you're at the top and you have a bunch of workstations, it'll search all through those objects of workstations and everything else. So it's good to kind of tailor this down to just users and those users that you want involved for management as well as ZCC administrators. We're talking about all users for the zone, whether they're a customer on the end using and installing the bundles, or if there's somebody administering bundles. All right, so that's one thing to note is don't start too high. So I could go digitalerror.com. If you're a small organization, it won't take that long, obviously, to search. But if you're a very, very large directory, it may take a little bit. You'll see some differences, right? Depending on how many objects it has to dredge through. Okay. So that's one thing to note is the LDAP users and LDAP users group. So when they come in, you can see actually the users. Here's users group. I can specify manually some users groups, okay? Or I can go into the LDAP and see what's been pulled in by user groups. So you could see in the DC OU, there was a couple of groups that came in. All right, so you can take advantage of that by distributing to those groups as well. Or you can create your own, okay, at the top. But you can see here, Digital Airlines, and then I have users in each one of these different containers that we had, depending on the departments, okay. And what we want to do is understand that we'll probably play in departments a lot because we may want info services, certain technicians to have rights in here, but not in other areas, right? And that's the whole purpose of the rights. The other thing that is one way I've seen organizations organize these in many awesome different ways. One thing that we did when I was a customer is we would have them in a similar organization of policies and bundles by department, all right? Because each department had their own bundles or policies, applications or policies, and so we would just define them the same way, all right? So we'd have departments as well. But if you notice, there's also an enterprise. So you may have enterprise applications that go out to everybody, and you may have an administrator that can distribute enterprise bundles to everybody, and they can have rights to this particular container here. Whereas you may not want them in the HR department distributing applications because there's a high cost application that's licensed and you have to track it and all of that. So you may have somebody just pertaining to that particular organization, human relations or finance or whatever. All right. So the way we did it is we did it by department because our OU was set up that way. Our directory source was set up that way, so we just created the policies and bundles a similar way. Now you also, if you notice, there's a test area. So maybe you have somebody that builds the policy or bundle, and maybe you have another person that checks it and deploys it. So if you have a separate area for that, you can then just give them God rights into test area, right? They can do and go nutty, but they can't deploy or do anything else. All they can do is test. And then you may have a similar situation under workstations where you have test devices. And we don't in this particular case, but we could create a new folder called test devices. Maybe this is your lab, and you want to be able to test on devices in that lab, right? So you give them rights there as well. So let's see how that kind of unfolds. When we go into configuration, we can see the administrators. All right, I imported a few of them. I brought in one of the groups, and so one thing to remember. Let's go here. And one thing to remember is there is a tally over here to show 10 or 5. Default is 5. So you know, every once in a while I'll go, oh, that's right, we have another one. Because as you're building bundles or policies, it may come up to where you've gone past that limit, and then you don't see it and you're wondering where it is. Okay, so these are our users here, our ZCC administrators. Okay, now we have roles, but we'll talk about roles in just a little bit. All right, but let's, for instance, say that we want Steve Rogers to be able to have rights. Okay, one thing to note, side note, super administrator, if this is checked, you have rights to everything, okay, across the board. So careful with how you distribute that. When you're bringing in new users and you have super administrator rights set, and you say, give them the same rights I have, this may be checked. So make sure you check this particular checkbox if you want them assigned to just specific things. All right. But basically, when you assign rights, you're going to go ahead and assign, let's say we want to be able to build bundles, right? And we don't want them to create or delete groups. We don't want them to modify group. Everything's pretty much done for them. So we want to make sure that they're just doing testing, right? So they're not going to publish. They're going to author, but not publish. They can't assign bundles because it's going to be in the test lab. All right. So we're going to say add bundles, and we have the test area. So they can add as many bundles as they want in the test area. Okay. And they can view the audit logs and those types of things. Oh, modify groups. We'll take that off. Okay. All right. And you can see here, there's acronyms for each one of these. View log, audit log. You have deny, modify group, those types of things. All right. So that's what that's about. Now, if I hit apply, Steve Rogers now has rights to build bundles in there, but he doesn't have any rights to test it yet. We need to do a device rights, and we're going to give him device rights to the lab. So if we go here, workstations, and then test lab, any devices in the test lab, he could then do, he has rights for these particular functions. And in our case, we don't want them, again, modifying groups. We want them testing, right? We just want them to be able to build the golden bundle so that we can then use it, okay? So we'll make some of the modifications in here, and however you have that. But also one thing to note is this is device right, but then there's quick task rights. Remember that this is here as well because you have some permissions here. You may not want them to wake up devices or shut down devices. Now in the test lab, we may want them to, right? So here's some things, maybe not apply image, but then again, if he's testing and we need him to refresh that test lab, we'd give him apply an image or take an image or remote wipe. those particular devices. Okay, so we can leave those on. Okay, now he has the ability to create bundles in the test area and run them on test lab. Now he's able to author. If we go here, he's able to author but not publish, which means he's going to be able to use the sandbox version, right? Now, since we have him narrowed down just to the test lab, we could actually put publish in here so that he could publish that, make it the golden one, and test on the test devices. Because once it's complete, then he's able to turn it over to the next person who does the QA check, and he's good to go. All right. So that's a quick, easy way to set up the rights for an administrator for, let's say, bundles. Now, let's say we're going to say Peter Parker. He has some rights. We're going to say he's our policy guy, right? We'll do pretty much the same thing. We don't want him to modify groups or folders or anything. All right, we're going to let him author and publish again because we're going to give him a particular context, one, to build the policies, okay? And then two, to deploy them on devices in the test lab, okay? So again, we have both sets of these rights. Now he can, if this is set here, then he can modify folders within that context, within this context here of the test lab, okay? But you can tailor that down to exactly what needs to be done for their role that they actually do. And now one thing we didn't discuss was users, because policies can also go to users. So you have users as well. And we're going to go ahead and I don't know that I have a test user, but we're going to let's see if I have any under users. Nope. So we're going to say that the DC is our test users. Okay. No, yeah, DC, that's fine. So that's a context that if a user's logged in, that's from DC, or if it's in the test lab. So you may have a user that's a test user or users that are in a particular container. That way you can actually run with both in that test lab, and that's helpful. Okay, so now we can deploy policies to users, devices, and policies. I hope that's big enough for everybody. We can hit OK. All right. Now we're going to go back to Steve Rogers because he can also deploy. We want him to deploy to users as well. And we said that our user source was DC. So we'll select DC. And we'll allow him those particular things. And if you notice on there, edit, let me go a little slower. You can see assign policies and assign bundles to the user. Very good. So now let me see if I got, where's my other browser? Let's go here. Oh, we're there. Log out. I haven't used him in a long time. There we go. So Rogers, if we look at Rogers, we can go into bundles in the test area, and I can create new bundles. See, I can create a new bundle and start the whole sequence up. Okay. If I go to a different area, Yeah, I can do that. Why? Let's see. I'm into Steve. He might have some other... Oh, I think he had some roles he was playing. Let's go back over to here. Let's go Steve Rogers. He was our bundle rights guy. His summer, yeah, he has some other groups he's in that may have rights as well. And this is one thing that you want to be aware of is if they're involved with groups that have separate rights, it flows down, right? It's inherited. All right. So be aware that that's happening. Let me see if, and they all have some sort of groups. So it is inherited, as you could see on that particular example. He can also go in here and create a new bundle as well. And go through. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to. The new would not have bundle in it. Okay? Or it wouldn't have edit and those types of things. See the quick tasks again, being able to install, launch, and repair. All of those settings that we saw in the permissions relate to these here for this context. Now we're in this bundle zone, but enterprise, I don't think I set it on any of them because I have a group. Okay, so that's how it's related, right? It can be inherited as well. So making sure that you have those settings when you're starting out, make sure you double check the groups that they're in and so forth, so that they can have just what you need them to do. Okay. Administrators. Go like this. Give us a little more real estate. Okay. So here is our, oh, this is a different, oh, hang on. That's a different 192.168.115. I was on a different zone. Yeah, I don't want that. I'm using the same user source, so I got them mixed up. Let's see if we have a better results here. No, I'm in, oh, I want to log out. I want to log in as S. Rogers. Okay, let's go to bundles again. Let's go into enterprise and see if his group, oh, see that? I can't do it. I was on the wrong zone, I apologize. So you can see here, he cannot create any bundles in enterprise, but if he went to the test area, he should be able to create a bundle. Okay, but notice I inhibited him from creating any folders. The folder's grayed out. The bundle group is grayed out. So again, all of those details of permissions fall under these menus. Good. So that gives a good example. Now, if he wanted to do policies, let's go see if he does policies. So if we go to policies, and we'll even go to the test area, hoping he can, but nope, see that? They're all grayed out. He can view them. Actually, he can't view them. I believe he'd be able to view them, at least see the list, like he can with bundles. I don't think I have any in the TTP. Let's double check. Let's go here. We are in as administrator. We can, oops, we can go to here, bundles, test area, TTP. Oh yeah. So there are a lot of bundles in there. Let's check our policies. Test area, TTP. There are some. So in that example, he can't even see what's in there because he doesn't deal with policies. All right. Clear as mud. Okay, and then also, what users can Steve Rogers go to? I think we said it was DC. I can't see that. Let's go in here. I can see these, right? But I can't see anything else. So it really privatizes that area. Where I worked before, we had a police department and a fire department, and they had separate things and separate, you had to have clearance and all sorts of things for going in there. So this really worked well for us to be able to divide the zone up and secure it. So it couldn't be used by anybody that had specific use for it. Okay? Good. So now, one thing to note is you could go into, let's take this a step at a time. So we talked a little bit about super administrator. I'm going to go back over to my other. So I'm in as administrator here. Looking, yeah, I'm in as administrator so I can see everything that's going on here. Let's talk a little bit about roles. Now, you can do them individually, but if you have a team of 10 or 12 and you're adding different things to them, that gets kind of mundane, right? It gets tedious and it takes a lot and trying to remember all the different settings and so forth. So the one good thing is there's roles under configuration. Administrators, there's administrator roles. All right. And so, for instance, we have ZenWorks Service Desk attached to this. And ZenWorks Service Desk, from ZenWorks Service Desk, you can launch a remote control session, or you can have bundles come in and manage bundles and assign bundles. So I just created a role that had all the specifics of a ZSD remote control administrator, right? And so I have remote control management rights for these for this, and it basically allows all of it: remote control, remote view, transfer files, all of that, right? You can change it obviously for the role, but this is remote control for the Service Desk console. These people at the bottom are using ZenWorks Service Desk to launch remote control or bundle management, assigning bundles and so forth. Okay, so if I wanted to add somebody like Rogers to this role, I would see remote management rights, but it says none. Rights are not effective until I assign it a context, right? Maybe he's only able to do lab devices. So he's our tester for Service Desk in the lab devices. So we can go test lab and the users, which I think we deemed DC as the users for the testing area. Okay. So that gives a context of what Steve has rights to. Okay. Just these contexts. But let's say we had a group, and I think we have the DC Hero group. So we can actually give them all the rights needed at once. Because remember, it's inherited. Oops, wrong one. Okay, so those were our test lab things. All right, makes sense? So now we've been able to, one, pre-establish what certain administrators can do by giving them roles. Okay, Here's a bundle administrators for licensed apps only, right? Because those are licensed, they may cost $10,000 a pop, and you don't want to just have somebody distribute those anywhere. So you have a bundle administrator that does license in this case, and he can basically distribute license bundles to the people, and that's Clark. All right. Now, you also may have an imaging or wiping. You don't want just anybody wiping a device. So if you've turned it off on most everybody, and then you could turn it on for those individuals that, when it's escalated to that point, can do those services. All right. You can see there's a patch administrators for devices, patch administrator for zone. The difference is deploying devices, deploying to devices in this case. And then the other case is configuring and managing the patch. So being able to manage the zone rights for these particular rights for the zone. Okay. You might ask, hey, we never talked about unset. You're right. We haven't talked about unset. What is unset? Well, in this particular case, if I were to view leaf, which means viewing all the folders below it, right? If I check this to unset, it will then look for inheritance for those. This is a direct inheritance for the policy administrator role, who's ever in it, or it'll look for inheritance in the highest is system. So whatever the system default is, that's what would come in if you have it unset. All right. So you don't have to apply every single time these rights. Maybe you always want, in your particular setting, you always want author. So you set it at system level, and then all the rest of them you just do unset. Okay. That's how those work. Again, any questions, go ahead and put them in chat. But we're going to continue on. So you can see here we have zone administrators, because look at all the new roles. We can make any role we want, but then you can assign the rights for that role. So you can see zone rights, user group, ZenWorks user group rights, user source rights. Okay. You may not want people playing with the user source. You may not want them doing anything with the subscriptions or system updates. Okay. So again, being able to manage all the different areas of that could be very helpful. All right. License management, location rights. That's one thing that can be tricky, right? If you look at your locations, because if you have a location with, hang on, let me see if I can grab it real quick. Yeah, location, and if we go to servers, this one checkbox could really be detrimental if you don't have two of the servers in the list, right? Because it's not going to look at the default location. It's going to look at this location only and exclude everything else. So if this is misconfigured, or if somebody comes in here and accidentally checks that, that would not be a good thing, because then you don't have communication or collection or different things going on in that area. All right, so that's one of the gotchas as far as administrators, making sure when you start tailoring this down, and there is a good documentation about the different rights and so forth. We talked a little bit about rights, zone, bundles, policies, devices and users, remote management, and where. The other thing is, or another thing, know that you can get to, for instance, bundles. If we go to test area, you can look at details and you can see the settings. So here are the system settings for that folder. Okay. And depending on what it is, may have a different set of settings. Okay, where it's getting its, in this case, where it's getting its replication from, and how often, and so forth. All right. Again, you can look at the details of each one of these by basically this is the object details as opposed to going into this folder and seeing what's below it. Okay, what's inside the folder. All right. Those are a lot of the common ones. The unset threw me off when they first introduced that way back, ZCM 11, I think. Trying to understand that, but then it was easy concept to understand that it just inherits from where you need to go, from upstream. Okay. Again, closest to the object wins. That's one thing I learned to remember. So, for instance, if we have test area TTP, if I have specific rights on this bundle, then that wins over the rest, even though I may have under test area a different set of rights. Okay. And we did talk a little bit about roles with ZSD. Talked a little bit about inheritance, devices, workstation groups. Remember, you have workstation groups as well. These are dynamic workstation groups because they have the little diamond, green diamond. I didn't create one. We can do a new workstation group. Test. Workstation group. And we can add to it. I think I have some, well, we'll just add this guy to it. Next, finish. If we go down to the bottom. So workstation group does not have the diamond or the arrows. Dynamic is set up so that it has some filters to bring those in automatically. Okay. And again, you can have, depending on your assignments and so forth, what's inherited bundles and what's direct assigned bundles. Okay, now that's getting away from permission. It's more of permissions for the bundle itself, in a sense. So we could have a direct assigned bundle. Let's say Tech Tools will do command. And then we could see it's direct, but we don't have any inherited. But if we go to the, now that's a workstation group. So if we go to the workstation now, we can see through assignments, minimize this a little bit, inherited, you can see command and info collector there. This one's inherited by the test workstation group. Let me go like this and scroll over. This one's inherited by the test workstation group. This one's inherited by the folder itself. I would suspect that everybody in this folder workstations has info collect available to it as a bundle. And you can see the details of where it resides. Let me minimize this a little bit. Right? This one's going to be in the application window. Okay. All right, so that's more of inherited and direct assignments for the bundles themselves. Same thing goes with policies. But as far as permissions and being able to create and organize your technicians and their duties, that's where the permissions come in to assigning those ZCC administrator rights. Again, that's under configuration, administrators, and they're here. Okay. So we created all these roles to make it simpler to assign. You may have somebody that's leaving and somebody else taking over those duties. Easy. Just put them in and out of this particular role. You don't have to worry about, oh, what did I assign them and to which context? You can say this is to zone or this is to test lab or whatever. Makes it real simple. All right. And of course, we copied some policies. Policy also has groups. Okay. Inherited, system, the folder, the groups, the user devices, device precedents. So when you do assign, and this is a little bit off topic, but if you do assign, for instance, this, let's say we're going to assign this to a device. We'll go ahead and assign it to this desktop. Next. You have user precedents. So depending on this policy, does it have a user context? Does it have a device context? Or does it have both? And what part of that do you want it to apply to? Whether it's ignored or not. Okay. That's what those are. As far as bundles, if we went into here and we did a relationships, and we assigned it to a device, direct assignment. Again, we're going to go to workstation and select it. And then where am I going to put it for it to launch? Then you have schedules. Distribution schedule is great if you have a big bundle. Let's say you're deploying. I know we deployed Office 2003. I believe, 2007, we were doing the whole suite to devices, and we had to upgrade it. So we had, MSIs and everything for the particular bundles. We had the scripted out, but we did a distribution schedule to pre-distribute to the device to cache it locally before installing it. And so if you do a distribution schedule, each one of these has its own connotation as far as when that occurs, what do we do? So in distribution schedule, we could then say during a particular event, I want you to, like user logout, I want you to distribute this content so it's there ahead of time. And then don't check the install immediately after distribution or don't launch immediately after installation. You want it to sit there so that when you get to your installation schedule, you want to do that. You're going to basically power up all the machines on Sunday night, and you're going to go ahead and launch it Monday morning at 2 a.m. Then you could say launch immediately if it's a launch type application. In this case, it's just an install. Okay? Those are some of the ways to interpret when you're assigning. And the same thing goes with users. If we just pick users next, the same type of thing. When the user logs out, when the device logs out. Remember, the device logs into ZCC also, or ZCM also. It gives it status, it has to give inventory, all that stuff. So there is a background login for devices also. And then there's also enforcing policies immediately. When you have policies, it'll ask you, do you want to enforce them immediately? Similar to installing a bundle now, right, in that list when you deploy. I did put together a couple of import. One thing I wanted to mention is when you're building a test system or you want to bring up a zone quickly for testing, you joined a beta and you want to get up so that you can install the beta on top of it. This is a little side note about importing scripts. So here's a script that you can do everything with Zman commands. In this case, we have a bunch of different commands throughout this. I'm actually going to pull over this one, which is what I used to build my zones for. And we did a ZENcast on this all together. But you can see that I basically, it has to be in order because you can't put a device into a group without having the device created, right? So you create the device, you create the group, drop it in the group, right? So it has to be an object in the database before it can actually be moved to the group. So you'll see a lot of that. But you can actually see local administrators creating credentials, okay, admin roles. So I can create admin roles for these type roles just on the fly, just with Zman commands. And I just script it out. I run the Zman BEX command, and it pretty much runs it. I do have I copied over everything I needed to here, and we are going to run that command here, and you'll see it pop up. It's obviously going to ask for an administrator. This particular administrator, and this one is 89. Real quick. Nope, not 189. Okay, you'll see that there's nothing in here. Okay, home. You can see there's just a server. That's it. All right, let's go on over here and run this, finish running this command. And then it's gonna, I have it in the script to ask for ASC, so that it will actually, and it's creating these two administrators. Okay, and then it's going to run off. So the ASC actually, every command needs to know if you're an administrator to run that command. So even if it's in a script, so you do the ASC to hold it, and then you could remove that credential at the end. And some of these will fail on purpose, but we have some that'll just flow right in. You saw that there was 0. If we look back over, if we start refreshing here, we'll see we got 25 bundles now. 26, 1 policy, 7 policies. Okay, and you get a total. There were 28 commands that failed, and if you look in the zman.log, it'll tell you what it is, what the failure is, or you can scroll up in this particular console. So just a couple of things to remember when you're building out. You can also set, like I mentioned, you can set those permissions. Here you can put in your license code. You can see how far back this goes. This is an old one. But you can also have your roles as well. We have registration rules, keys. Where's my roles? Oh, right here. So the roles are all created. If we go back over there and look at this, we can go to configuration. We're in 89 now. Is this 89? No, this is 150. Let's go to the other one. 89, we go to configuration, administrators. You can see the roles are here and the 2 administrators I created. All right. I didn't see much in chat. I think we're getting close to the end of the hour, so I appreciate everybody being here. If there's anything else you'd like to know, I'll be on chat for a little bit, but feel free to email me if you have different techniques you want to try or do, and we can cover them on our ZENcast. We'd be happy to do that. If you're looking for any of the scripts or files, you'll see them in the descriptions, or email me at zen@microfocus.com. Be happy to send those to you, just so that you have some sort of a foundation for running that. There's a couple of guides in the README, or in this presentation. Just a couple of quick references. They're out there on the site. Again, email me at zen@microfocus.com. But next week, we're going to do appliance console navigation. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to navigate through the appliance console. They made it easy in a lot of different ways that you may not be aware of. So we're going to try and expose some of those for you so that you can easily understand more about the appliance, and you'll be able to maybe use them in your environment if you haven't already. Otherwise, I think we're down to the end of this presentation. I thank everybody for being here. I appreciate you tagging along for me today. Stay cool, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you much.